Hello, I'm Beryl Dov Lerner. I teach philosophy at the Western Galilee College in Israel. This is my lecture, Who Will Remember Us? Transhumanism and the Possibility of Remembrance in light of Samuel Scheffler's death and the afterlife. So first of all, who is Samuel Scheffler? He is a philosopher who deals in ethics, teaches at New York University these days. And in 2012, he gave the Tanner Lectures in Human Values at Berkeley, and they were called Death and the Afterlife. This was afterwards, they appeared in a book together with commentary by several other important philosophers and his responses. I should point out that when he uses the word afterlife, he's using it in a very idiosyncratic sense. He's not referring to the afterlife of an individual who has died, but rather the continued existence of the human race after the death of a particular individual. And what he's interested in doing is to give a new non-utilitarian argument for why we should care about future generations. In recent philosophy, there's been a lot of talk about concern for the welfare of future generations having an effect on our decisions today in our utilitarian calculations. He wants to show that we have a certain concern for these future generations, which is not simply based in concern for their welfare. And his basic thesis is, it is my contention that the existence of an afterlife, in my non-standard sense of the afterlife, which I've explained, matters greatly to us. It matters to us in its own right, and it matters to us because our confidence in the existence of an afterlife is a condition of many other things that we care about continuing to matter to us. In other words, he wants to say that the continued existence of the human race allows us, the knowledge that the human race will continue to exist allows us to care and continue to care about things that are important to us now in our present lives. I'll go into details soon you'll get a clearer picture of what that's about. So the way he tries to investigate this is by offering a series of two thought experiments in which we can think about what it would be like to live with knowledge that there will not be a future for the human race. So the first one is, suppose you knew that although you yourself would live a normal lifespan, the earth would be completely destroyed 30 days after your death in a collision with a giant asteroid. How would this knowledge affect your attitude during the remainder of your life? And he thinks that it would have a very bad effect on our attitudes. And he goes through a lot of psychological and philosophical speculations to say that we would find that many of our life projects and activities would be drained of value, knowing that after we reached our natural deaths at a good old age, humanity would soon cease to exist. This knowledge would have a bad effect on our being able to care about our activities and projects. However, he finds it an imperfect example because it's sort of infected by our concern for our immediate loved ones and friends and people who we personally care about. So it's not because these people would continue to live 30 days after we died, right? And this would sort of infect our psychology, and maybe we would be more upset over the knowledge that our loved ones would soon die rather than that we were concerned about the continued existence of humanity. So he tries to offer a better example, and it's based on P.D. James's 1992 novel, Children of Men. 4 years after his lectures turned into a movie, which you may have seen, maybe it's better known than the novel, the movie, The Children of Men, where the basic idea here is that humanity comes to an end due to a kind of pandemic of infertility for decades, no new children have been born, and people come to realize that they are the last generation of human beings. When they die, that will be the end of it. So, in the manner of a philosopher, Scheffler hopes that this example, something like this, will offer us an opportunity to think about what it would be like to live with the knowledge that humanity will come to an end without its having an immediate harmful effect on the people who we immediately and personally care about. Of course, that's also imperfect, but in the manner of a philosopher, he tries to wave this away and speculate about the psychology of people in a situation where they are not immediately affected, their loved ones are not immediately affected by the end, by knowledge that humanity will come to an end, but they're very well aware that humanity is coming to an end. What does he think this will do to us? How will this affect our lives? So here's a paragraph which summarizes the way that he thinks this will drain the meaning from a lot of our projects and activities. First, there are some projects such as cancer research or the development of new seismic safety techniques, say, against earthquakes, which would be threatened because they have a goal-oriented character, and the goals they seek to achieve would straightforwardly be thwarted if the human race were imminently to disappear. If I am working on a cure for cancer with the hope of ridding humanity of this scourge, knowledge that humanity is coming to an end anyway sort of makes the whole thing pointless. Second, there are some projects, including creative projects of various kinds, which would be threatened because they tacitly depend for their perceived success on their reception by an imagined future audience, and the end of human life would mean the disappearance of audiences. To give an extreme example, if I dream of being the next Shakespeare, part of that is that my plays will continue to be produced and enjoyed for centuries after my death. If I know the human race is coming to an end, I know that my artistic projects cannot enjoy that kind of success, and I can wonder what's the point of it. Third, there are a large number of activities, included but not limited to those associated with participation in a tradition, which will be threatened because their point is in part to sustain certain values and practices over time, and the efforts of human life would mark the defeat of all such efforts. If, for instance, I belong to a religious tradition which is devoted to the service of God and worship and through certain rituals and the belief in God and so forth, I'm very interested in the worship of God continuing, and these rituals that their practice should continue. If I know that it will all soon come to an end, I might ask myself, what is the point of engaging in these practices, of trying to promote them if it won't last in any case? Fourth, and relatedly, there are activities that would be threatened because they are aimed at promoting the survival and flourishing of particular national communal groups, and those aims too would be doomed to frustration if human life were about to come to an end. If I'm some kind of, I'm involved in nation building or national liberation or the promotion of a certain culture or a certain ethnic group or whatever it is, all of these human groups, which elsewhere Scheffler mentions, they offer me a kind of afterlife. I know that even if I don't survive, that at least my ethnic national group or my community will continue to survive, and I'll have some kind of continued social existence through the survival of the group. Well, that doesn't help very much if all humanity is going to die off soon. And so what is the point of my trying to promote their survival and flourishing? All right, so we could take all of this and turn it on its head and wonder about if the future generations play this role in giving value to what we do, in making what we do matter to ourselves. we have to believe in the future, in the continued existence of the human race and future generations in order for our own projects now to have value. Well, that would seem to be that our relation to the past creates the value, makes valuable sort of posthumously the projects and activities of people in previous generations. So in a kind of symmetrical way, remembrance, as is the subject of this conference, and preservation and continuation and enjoyment of projects and the fruits of activities of people in the past lend value to those past lives. Now, there has been a lot of discussion in the past few decades, since I think 1980, in analytic philosophy about whether the living can really owe something to the dead. I won't go into some kind of mapping of the debates, but I'll just mention Ernest Partridge in his article, Posthumous Interest and Posthumous Respect, as something perhaps applicable also to the present discussion. Now here he's more specifically talking about a situation such as the question, why should we honor the last will and testament of the dead? They have left us with a legal document asking that their possessions be distributed in a certain way after their death. They're dead, but they're dead. So what claim do they have on us? What does it matter how we distribute their possessions? We can't hurt them, they're dead. So Partridge offers what he calls a social contract theory of why we should pay attention to these interests of the dead. And it goes, and here's a quote from his article: "The to-be posthumous interests of the living are protected by their resolution to respect in their own time the quasi-interests of the deceased. I have presently, as a living person, an interest in what will happen after I die. My wife and I have written up a will, and we presently have an interest that this will be carried out after we die. It will be then posthumous. And how do we go about trying to ensure that these future posthumous interests of ours will be protected? We do this by promoting a culture in which the presently posthumous interests of those who are already dead will be respected. Or in the case of a last will and testament, I make sure that the law respects the requests found in the last will and testament of people who have died, with the idea of promoting a culture which, when I die, will also respect my requests that I made while I was alive regarding what should happen after I die. So it's sort of paying it forward. I respect the past so that the future will respect me. The living accomplish this by contributing to the moral sense, by maintaining the moral community, and by supporting just and stable institutions. Thus, they support their own expectations that they may make plans of their own on this basis. So we could apply this to the kind of analysis that we found in Scheffler. And we might say that through respect of the values and the projects and the communities of the past and their preservation, today we are lending meaning to the lives of people who lived in the past. And we promote this kind of practice in the hope that this is how our own projects and values and communities will be treated in the future, that people, the community will continue to support this kind of respect for the past, this kind of, to a great extent, commemoration. If this sounds a little egocentric, don't people, isn't there a value in itself to respecting the past? Why isn't it a little kind of mercenary to respect the past just in order so that we will be respected by the future? I can only suggest that you look into this article. You can Google it, find it on the internet and read it for free, and you can see his attempt to show how this is truly a moral principle. All right. Now I would just like to conclude by saying something about the question of transhumanism. Now, something that Scheffler really didn't go into is respect for past abilities. And I think that if you look into any situation where an old timer is talking to young people, they'll always talk about how they had to trudge through the snow to get to school, or how they had to work with hand tools to do carpentry instead of using power tools, or say in my case, had to use a manual typewriter to type up papers in high school instead of having the use of a computer with a good word processing program. Actually, my mother ended up typing up a lot of papers, but I had to do a certain amount of typing. And to type up a good copy would require a kind of skill and a kind of effort, which people today can still respect, even though they themselves would never use such a machine. They can understand that it would be difficult to do it and it would require developing a certain kind of skill to do it, which they can still appreciate. They can still respect it, even though they have no interest in developing it themselves. If they wanted, they could find an old typewriter and check out how hard it is. Now, this is true for human history all the way back to the Stone Age. I can learn about Stone Age methods of making a fire, and I can appreciate how those methods required skill, and there's ingenuity in the development of those methods, even though I would never dream of making a fire in that way myself, unless somehow I was stuck on a desert island without any matches. But in real life, I would never really have to do it, but I can appreciate that there was skill, ingenuity, and effort involved. Now, here's the problem. If we are really going towards some kind of transhuman and post-human revolution in the next generations, where due to genetic engineering, technologies incorporating electronics into the human body and so forth, we will have generations of people for whom cognitive abilities way beyond anything found in natural human beings, and perhaps also physical abilities beyond anything found in natural human beings. If this is the only life which they know, not only will they be incapable of appreciating in an empathetic way the Stone Age tools, use of tools to make fire, they won't be able to appreciate anything that we do either, any of our skills, any of our abilities. We wouldn't be able to tell somebody like that, well, imagine it's true that nobody has to actually use their biological brain to think up a lecture for a conference anymore, but imagine how difficult that must have been. They won't be able to turn off the electronic parts of their brain. They won't know what that was like. It won't mean anything to them. They won't know what it would be like to have to produce a lecture for a conference with a brain which had not have been genetically engineered. And so, in that manner, we will have no one left who will be able to respect our past abilities and who will be able to remember us as people who made those efforts and those achievements. They won't be able to remember us in a respectful way, thinking of us as their equals. So that's what I had to say. Anybody wants to contact me about this lecture, here is my email. Thank you very much.